Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters Business, your source for everything business. My name is Adam Torres. You can follow me on Instagram at AskAdamTorres. Keep up with my book releases, book tour schedule, signings, all that other good stuff. Always love to connect with you there. And as always, if you'd like to apply to become a co-author of one of my upcoming books, just head on over to the website, moneymatterstoptips.com, and click on Become an Author to apply. All right, so today is a very special reunion 2020 episode. What is that? That's when I bring on a guest I had on in the past, and I liked them so much I had to bring them right on back. So today's guest is Jacobo Lumbreras, who is CPO and co-founder over at Catalog, which is a commercial photo production software for consumer brands. Jacobo, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Adam. Good to be back.
Oh, man. So today's topic, how to build successful direct-to-consumer brands. You work with a lot of them. It's the specialty of Catalog and what you do. So I'm excited to get into what you've seen, your insight, what works, what doesn't work. But before we do that, I don't want to assume that all of our newer listeners caught your first episode. So first, just give us a little bit more background of Catalog and how you're helping your clients.
Definitely. So it's pretty simple. Catalog helps consumer brands produce commercial photography. These brands use this sort of photography on their Instagram. They use it on billboards, on marketing materials, email, print, anywhere really that the brand wants to engage with their customers. We help them produce those photos. So when you look at, some of these pretty pictures from brands like Away Travel or Allbirds that are super cool and sometimes it's more just a GIF or a video. They're produced by companies like Catalog. So we help hundreds of those brands every single month to produce that type of content.
That's awesome. Let's just transition right into our main topic, which is how to build successful direct consumer brands. So the first thing I would say is it probably all starts with the story, right? So they have to have that type of vision. Assuming they have that, where would they begin next?
Yeah, it's interesting. Obviously Catalog is a software company, but by result of that, we end up working with hundreds of these consumer brands every single month. And some of them are very well established, but some of them are nascent. They have one or two products in market, or sometimes even they're thinking about launching a product. They haven't launched it yet. And I think there are a lot of commonalities between these companies, and the ones that I think I find the most successful or are growing the fastest are those that truly understand who their customer is and how to best engage with them. And so it's less so about sort of what type of product they make, whether it's a moisturizer or a suitcase or a pair of shoes. What I see about these brands is that when they truly understand who they're selling to, what the customer cares about, and kind of sort of what they need, and they're able to craft, like you mentioned, a story around that that really resonates to that type of customer, then you see them over time sort of overtake to a lot of those brands that maybe at the beginning made a lot of noise, but over time they start to sort of wear out.
Can you give an example of a company that, and it could be one you worked with, it could be one that you just noticed and it's a common example, but can you give an example of somebody that's done a great job with using photos and their story in the manner that you're talking about, to really establish themselves in their marketplace?
Of course. Yeah. So, we work with a lot of different beauty brands, a lot of the type of brands that you would see in Sephora or Ulta Beauty. There's particularly one brand that, we really, really like, and it's called Naked Poppy. And it's a cosmetic brand. So they combine both software intelligence and as well as products. So they will essentially provide you recommendations of what specific cosmetic products you should be using based on a bunch of data points they have about you. And the amazing thing about this company is that, since they started, they've been incredibly patient on how they build their company. They didn't rush to market. They didn't rush to, sort of launch big marketing campaigns. They spend a lot of time getting to know their customers and figuring out what the customers want. And so, before the customer even buys a product from them, they get to interact with the brand through a series of sort of visual cues and visual materials that at the same time that get the customer super excited about their product, they also give the brand super valuable data on what the customer cares about. So by the time it comes to actually selling, the brand knows exactly what the customer is going to buy. And so it makes the sale very, very simple.
It seems like going that route makes it, depending, of course, on the size and the budget. I mean, it seems like you'd also save some money there, right? Like really defining your because most people, what a lot of people do, they have an idea, they bring it out, they have the right budget, then they start advertising, they start testing different advertising campaigns. But if you have this base that you can really get to know and cultivate, it seems like it'd be the right way to do it within a better budget, but also to gain a stickier client long term. Am I off or?
Absolutely. The interesting thing is that, as you and I probably have seen, and many of your listeners, there are new products launched every single day. There is fierce competition to be able to acquire customers when you're producing sort of physical goods. And so, a lot of the times I see these brands spending a ton of money upfront by, launching a lot of different marketing campaigns that are not very well targeted. And so they spend a lot of money, they create a lot of motion, but there isn't much traction that comes with them. And so what I found, the successful brands that really kind of might take longer to take off at the beginning, but that have sustainable growth over time, are those that are able to nurture a very, very loyal customer base that they understand super well. And that customer base usually starts very small. A bunch of people that have very specific needs and that sort of have common problems across them. And this brand start with, that sort of customer base. And it could be in the few thousands. But once they understand those people and they start building for them, it's much easier for them to kind of build upon that than it would be if they take a very kind of wide but not very deep approach.
No, that's awesome, and I get it completely. And I see when the brands that do that well. I just have the luxury of what I do, talking to lots and lots of startups or people that are a couple years in, and you see the ones that succeed, the ones that don't, and it seems like the ones that really succeed are like year after year. When I bring them back on the show, if they received another invite, it's like, wow, that company just took off. You see a whole different website, you see everything. You see they're down a couple, they're in way further, a couple stages, and they typically, again, depending on the product, depending on the company, it seems like they find their niche a little bit more. They start refining it down in the skin and beauty market. I've found many brands that they end up offering less products over time or pivoting, or even as they get to understand their clientele better over time, really focusing on how they can best serve them. So there was one that had this huge, big old makeup kit type thing, and then they ended up focusing on 2 products. So they narrowed it down from 10 to 2, and now they really got traction in that marketplace and are looking at how they can corner that market in a huge demographic. So I love that, the whole thought process of really understanding your client or your clientele can really make a big difference.
Yeah, we have another example, interestingly enough. Today, a company called Brandless in San Francisco, they raised over $250 million, another SoftBank company. But what I found really interesting about Brandless is that they made brandless products, so products without a brand. They had about 400 or so SKUs, and although I thought the business model was extremely interesting, I always thought, they're launching too many things. They're in too many markets and they're competing with too many people. So instead of focusing on 3 to 5 different SKUs and really become a dominant player in that, they went with 400 different products.
Wow.
And I feel that's really difficult, especially, at the beginning stages of your company.
Yeah, I can't even. I think about our podcast and how we started, and we were over 1,000 episodes in before we started segmenting the content based on the users, and based on the listeners, and based on the feedback that we got from the people in there before we started even scaling to do different things there and to segment the different content in different places. I can't imagine just kind of taking myself back to day one if I was to say day one that I was going to launch and host 6 podcast shows. I'd be like, yeah, that's crazy. Why would you do that? It wouldn't even be a thought. But now over time, that took a lot of feedback, a lot of engagement, a lot of us really paying attention to the social media channels and the content that our listeners and following wanted. And based off of that, that's where I think we've been able to get some unique traction. So I just live in that space all day long. So I see it, and I'm like, everything that you're saying to the listeners, I mean, you might want to listen to this one a second time because there's a lot of nuggets that Jacobo is dropping here.
Yeah. It's
So
interesting. It's one of the. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say one of the, when you think about venture capital, one of the most interesting pieces of advice that investors always give you is, get focused. And the interesting thing is that that piece of advice doesn't make sense until you're 3 years in, and you look back and say, "Wow, I should have stayed more focused. I would have saved a lot of time and money if I did that."
So interesting you said. I think that's it. It's the 3-year mark. That's what they say. And if you can figure it out by then, or if you can pivot or do what you need to do and hopefully you survive, then you might be pretty good for a long and profitable business. Love it. So Jacobo, that being said, first off, awesome having you back on the show. Great times. Can't wait to have you back in 2021. We're going to do reunion 2021, be our third family reunion. We're going to bring the family back. That being said, if somebody's listening to this and they want more information on Catalog or to connect with you and your team on what you're doing, what's the best ways for them to reach out?
Just go to Google and type Catalog, or you can go to catalog.cc. We're on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. If you look for Catalog Official, you can find us there.
Fantastic. Well, hey, Jacobo, awesome having you back on the show. As always, great stuff there. And to the audience, as always, thank you for tuning in. Hope you got a lot of value out of this. If you did, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. Leave me a review. If you're watching this on our YouTube channel, definitely leave us some comments in the comment section. I'd love to engage with you there and to get your thought process on building consumer brands and what it takes. And Jacobo, thanks again for coming on the show.
Of course.